DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Big time to Stevenson, up against Kaminsky, fucking good in the ball!
Mantel, all the way to the basket, foul, lays it in for 2!
Hello, high school basketball fans. Welcome to the Upstate Podcast here on Monday, December 11th, 2023. I'm Jim Sinicropi along with Paul Russo and Kyle Evans here inside the FingerLakes1.com studios at 12 North Park Street in Seneca Falls. A new season of high school hoops is underway. We're going to look at the results so far, look ahead at the games coming up this week, and of course, we reveal our Week 1 boys and girls power rankings. But first, the Upstate Hoops Podcast and all our coverage of Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball is brought to you thanks to the support from Generations Bank, serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Little John and Barbie Orthodontics. Check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. Ricelli Northern, supporting local construction since 1929 with premium products and quality service. Cicino's Pizzeria and Restaurant. Order online at cicinos.com. And Dr. Jeffrey Halstead, Canandaigua's hometown dentist for more than 35 years. And, of course, DeSanto Propane since 1937. The difference has been DeSanto Propane. Well, boys, it's officially high school basketball season, and full slate of games already in the books. Give us somewhat of a feeling of what might go on this year, but a few things right off the bat that are different. The Lions are going independent. They're not part of the Wayne County League. The Penn Yan girls are in the Finger Lakes West. The Marcus Whitman boys remain in the Finger Lakes East. And Lions girls still in Wayne County. So just a little shuffling around. And before we go any further, I'll start with you, Kyle. That move by Lions to independent. They dominated the Wayne County League last year. Some question whether that was going to get them prepared for sectionals. So now they're trying something different.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I mean, they're still playing, the usual Wayne County teams, but now they're playing more non-league games. For example, in their opener, they played Marcus Whitman. That game was good for 3 quarters, and Lions kind of pulled away with their speed. But yeah, I like the move. There's some other matchups coming up that should be interesting and should give Lions more of a fight. You're not going to maybe see the 40, 50, 60-point wins as often as we saw last year. And it's a different team without J.C. Walker.
Yeah, a totally different team for Lions. Still incredibly talented. And you have any thoughts on that move, Paul?
I mean, it's pretty interesting. One move, though, Mid Lakes boys are back in the East as well this year.
Oh, that's right. They did go to the West.
Yeah, but, it's pretty interesting because they do this a couple of years ago too, Lions, if I recall right? Or maybe I'm
No, I think they wanted to. Marcus Whitman did for a while before they came to the East. They were a season or two as independent. It paid off. They won their first sectional title since 1976 that year. And I think Lions is looking for the same thing, just challenge themselves a little more. But I think that the teams at the top of Wayne County are a little better this year. The Ganondas in East Rochester, maybe Sodus. But the bottom of that Wayne County League, last year especially, Lions was just, it was like, no contest. And that isn't going to prepare you for these postseason games, especially when you're a program like Lions and you're looking to win sectional titles every year and hopefully get back to the state Final Four at some point.
Right, and, they put up, I know, a couple 100-point games, for example, and, that's cool and all, but, it's tough for the kids on all fronts, right? It's not exactly fun at that point, and especially if you're Lions, for example, right, who we know is good and competitive year in, year out, you do want to challenge yourself at that point, not take that, not easy road per se, but you at least want to make it competitive. You want to challenge yourself. You want to get yourself, like you said, Jim, prepared for, mid-February to the end of March, hopefully, and make a nice deep run through the postseason.
It's too bad because back, you probably got to go back 7, 8 years at least now. Wayne County was just jam-packed, and Clyde Lions was the game of the year both times, both at Clyde and at Lions. North Rose Wolcott had a great team that went to the big house a few times. East Rochester was strong. Gananda boys were strong. Definitely taking a hit. And that, before we get into the results, another theme I think from this season so far has been like these rosters are small. Like kids are not playing basketball. And of all the sports that are under pressure from declining enrollment in these upstate schools, you wouldn't think basketball would be one of them because you need 5 kids on the court. Another 5 on the bench would be ideal. And some of these teams are rostering, 6 or 7.
Yeah, for example, Waterloo girls have 7 active players right now. And I didn't realize they're a very, very young team. 4 of their 7 players are freshmen. They have 2 sophomores, 1 junior, no seniors. And their, I guess, leader right now would be Addison Bree.
Yep. Coach's daughter.
Extremely young.
Yeah. And I think they're positioned themselves, obviously they came off those great state runs past few years, and now I think they're kind of building back towards another one as the Bree girl gets a little older and that group matures together. But certainly you wouldn't expect that small roster size on Waterloo. That one might be more coach's choice rather than, I don't know what their JV team looks like or their modified program. But some of these, schools like the Lions girls, for example, they won a game in which they only were able to put 3 girls on the court at the end because they had 2 or 3 girls foul out, and they have 6 or 7 on the team.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's one of those things too where you bring up Waterloo, for example, and that's a good point because really the past few years you look, Coach Bree has only really carried 8 or 9 usually at an active point outside of sectional time, but to that end, it is a little bit concerning, right? Because we've seen locally, and I don't want to do the apples to oranges comparison, right? But we've seen football kind of had this faction out now locally where teams are going separately to another. And you want to look at basketball in particular, we've seen Romulus combined with South Seneca on the boys' side of things as Romulus tries to build back a program, right? Dundee and Bradford combined. Now we're a few years down the road with that. Williamson and Marion are combined up on the boys' side of things, I believe, right?
Girls.
Or girls' side, thank you. So it frankly, to put it bluntly, it kind of sucks, it sucks and it's concerning. I'm with you on that front. It kind of makes you wonder locally, anyway, the valuability of athletics kind of going forward as it currently stands.
Section 5. One of the best sections in New York State as far as high school basketball goes, and we here in the Wayne Finger Lakes are always really proud of our contribution towards that. And you could go back again in recent memory, and Wayne Finger Lakes teams just won sectional titles, and a lot of them made state runs and won state championships. And one of the things we do on this podcast is we try to see what teams do have the chance to win sectionals and go beyond. And there is a handful, but man, the depth of the Wayne Finger Lakes leagues, even the West, which has really struggled in recent years, produced sectional champions in teams like Bloomfield, and Naples had a really good team, maybe 9 or 10 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there's less of an interest in basketball in terms of participation, and it's too bad.
Yeah, and I actually went last night and did a lot of advanced research, I guess you could say, just to see because it seems like a lot of these games this year are lopsided. You got 20, 30, 40-point differences. So between the boys and girls, there have been 94 games played. Only 30 of those games have been decided by 10 points or less. So basically a lot of these games are decided 20-plus points, so they're not very competitive. You even look, I'm sure we're going to get more into it, but the Geneva-Newark game last week, Newark was pretty much in control the whole game. Yeah, it was just a 10-point difference, but just never really felt like Geneva had a chance to really take them down.
It's like there's a handful of programs who are committed to basketball and have great youth programs in their community and a consistent coaching structure and then throughout the school programs, modified JV varsity. And then you have some of these other teams that are rostering kids that, it's almost like they're just playing basketball on a whim.
Yep.
Not really brought up through the community programs and not really committed to the game. So it is a good point. There is definitely the haves and the have-nots, and so we're going to break them all down, see who is having and who is having not. Starting with a look at some of the games so far this season. Start with the boys. And we go back to November 4th, and you see the Minders boys open up with that nice win against Red Creek. But really, as you look at these results, the games that kind of stand out that I wouldn't mind talking about, in the West there was that Dundee, Bradford, South Seneca played each other. Dundee won 35-23, kind of a low-scoring game, but in this new season, interesting to see what the West looks like. And it was Dundee Bradford kind of putting their stake in the ground with that game against South Seneca. South Seneca only putting up 23 points. That gave them a 1-2 start. Also in the West, I think we had Bloomfield boys really handing it to Honeoye. So Bloomfield boys, along with Dundee Bradford, maybe Penyan, look like they might be so far looking like the teams at the top of the West. Moving to Wayne County, and before we get to Wayne County, I guess maybe let's save the Lions for the end here. But good game in Wayne County. Gananda beat Sodus 63-57. Miles Cavanis had 20 points. Cooper Grassell had 19. For Sodus, Amante Barr had 15. And so I think the Gananda boys are pretty good. I think Sodus is improved. And then also East Rochester kind of all over Williamson, 70-44. Elijah Tanner with 21 points. Judah Tanner with 19, 5 3-pointers. Dan Preston with 10. So those are the teams that look to be maybe the class of the Wayne County League now that Lions isn't in there. And let's move on quickly and talk about Lions.
Yeah, I mean, had themselves a pretty good week, I'd say, or opening couple weeks at this point.
Yeah, you look, they're independent now, and they're already 4-0.
Yeah.
They get off to these starts yearly. But yeah, like I said, Marcus Whitman put up a fight in the opener, but since then, they've kind of just ran past these teams. I mean, they beat Waterloo by, 30?
Yeah.
Marion, of course, Clyde Savannah. So yeah, Lions, 4-0, of course.
Yeah, I do want to do a quick moment to double back, though. Miles Cavanis, that's a name that we've kind of mentioned here now for a couple of years. Kind of crazy to think about, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Lions, though, you mentioned without J.C. Walker, Jacob Sides, another name that's graduated, right? But I'm really intrigued to kind of see Michael Briggs now kind of what I would call the de facto leader of that team on the court. Jameer Johnson, Stephen LeBrecq down low in the post. I know for the old school, quote unquote, big guy like me who grew up in the post, I'm really intrigued to kind of see how those two really get going as the season goes on. They've had, themselves a couple really good games each at this point. So I know, like I said, selfishly, I'm really looking forward to see how well those guys develop together down low. And Mikey Briggs, like I said, really kind of stepping up to that leadership role.
Jameer Johnson will be a lot for people to handle in the middle. The Shaq of the of the independent Wayne Finger Lakes teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still young. What is he this year, Kyle? You have any idea? Jameer Johnson?
Jameer Johnson is a sophomore.
Yeah, so he's, and he's just a physical presence. Would get flustered at times last year throughout sectionals. And this year without JC around. And Jacob Sides was a great presence on that team. That transfer from Newark last year really rounded out that team. So they're going to have to kind of fill those holes. But Jameer Johnson, to me, is the focal point of this Lions offense. I think when they get into play tougher teams, they'll scheme against Johnson, need other guys to step up. So you're looking at Jaheim Morris, Stephen LeBrecq, Xavier Horn, Wood Asbury. These guys got to kind of, it's their time now, going way back to Damon Tippy Hunter and the Smith brothers, Justice Smith. Who's going to be the next big thing at Lions? And obviously Jameer Johnson is your number one candidate, but if they're going to be a sectional championship team, make some noise in states, they got to round it out. They got to go, they got to be 5 solid on the court the whole time.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to, I think, a little bit what we were kind of talking about as a broader point, right? Roster and stuff like that. And, the nice thing about, you look at the Lions roster, right? And, maybe numerically it's not as deep as we've seen the past couple of years. But that's a group of kids who have played together in some way, shape, or form now for a couple of years through, whether it's, the travel aspect of it to JV and now varsity, and that makes a difference, right? I mean, what, your teammate X is going to do compared to teammate Y, and what, you can all just feed off each other and get moving like that. And that's something that, you mentioned all those names, right, Jim? That's something that is just kind of instilled in that nature up in Lions that I think, knock on wood, I don't think is going to be an issue this year, but you never know. That's why you play the games.
Yeah, just looking at some of the stats here for Lions, like in their first 4 games, you had obviously Jameer Johnson being the leading scorer for most of them, but then you look here against Waterloo, Mike Briggs led all scorers with 18. So I think it all depends, like you kind of mentioned, what are we going to get from Mike Briggs and Stephen LeBrecq, and Jameer Johnson's having a rough night at times. So, yeah, I think the depth is very important for this team.
But as usual, it'll be fun to watch. Always entertaining in Lions.
Definitely.
So shifting focus from the boys' side now to the Finger Lakes East. Always the premier conference, I think, or division when you're talking Wayne Finger Lakes High School basketball in recent memory. And you can't start talking about the Finger Lakes East without talking about Blankenburg and Wayne. To me, they look like the class of the league. They'll be the team to beat. I think the P.J. Ostrowski's still on the squad. He's like the
other night.
Yeah, he's great. One of my favorites. Wayne's the team to beat. Who's got a chance to make a run at him?
I wouldn't be surprised if Palmac makes a little noise in this. I think Newark's going to have Newark will have a say in it by the end as well.
Great game from Kellen Foster in that Geneva game we talked about. Yeah. 28 points, 4 3-pointers.
And he had 24 against, Pittsford Sutherland, I believe. So he's got 52 in 2 games.
And, with less, I guess, demand for the ball now with some graduations, Foster really has a chance to shine, and he's taken advantage of it so far. Of course, one player is not enough to win you a sectional title, so it's can these guys around him also
Allen.
Contribute.
Yep.
And Janor Allen, is that how you say it?
I believe so.
Yeah, those guys seem to be in the box score every night with Kellen Foster. So those are big pieces secondary-wise that could need to help out.
And then you have Palmac, as you mentioned, who I think we're going to see a lot of Palmac this year on Finger Lakes 1. But really, I think that program is such now that there's some continuity to it because there's another team that lost a lot, but they really look good so far this year, especially in their they had an easy win over Minders. They've lost a lot of size. They've lost, first they lost Paul Goodness, and then last year was Ian Goodness's senior year. So now it's kind of a fresh slate for Palmyra, and you're looking at Brendan Pepitone, Carter Young, Brady Leo, Shane Mayer, Jake McPike. These guys are some new names, and it seems like a more balanced attack in Palmyra.
Yeah, I think the nice part about them, too, is, you mentioned like a guy like McPike, for example, but he did have some run last year up at, with the guys who obviously graduated on, whether it's Goodness or Brooks or any of them. So, you kind of mentioned, the continuity of it. And, again, a roster that typically runs only about 8 or 9 deep on a given night, but a really good group of kids who work really well together. I think that's always one of the key things I enjoy watching with Palmac is just they hustle, they play hard, and there's some nights where it may only be like say a 35-27 win, but you have other nights where it's like 80-66. They always find a way to kind of get it done when it matters.
Yeah, and their only loss came to Livonia in the opener, and they had the lead at halftime. just kind of a rough third quarter is really what cost them that game. But overall, I think they played very well.
If you're looking at some other contenders in the East, I think you got to look at Marcus Whitman, who beat that Livonia team that beat that Palmac team. Coach O'Connor's built a great program there. There's a lot of last names on this Marcus Whitman roster that are reminiscent of names from their successful recent history, younger brothers, and so we'll get to know them a little more personally this year for sure. And then you have Mid-Lakes back in the East, who had a nice win over Albion, and a guy who really raised some eyebrows with a 25-point second half, finished with 31 points in that game against Albion, Kyle Kumke.
Yeah, he's had a couple bigger scoring now events, and obviously it's tough to go back, right? You have to, in theory, go back to last year, but he's had a couple good runs now, and Mid-Lakes is always typically, at least, going back to when I was in high school and everything, always just very athletic at the very worst, as I call it. And, usually they always have a couple sharpshooters, and maybe Kumke's that guy. I mean, you don't get to 25 just by, as I would say, staying in the paint at this point for the most part.
25 in the second half, so in 16 minutes,
Yeah.
Jackson Nurse, another name on there. His sister was, I believe it was a sister who contributed to the girls program on some of those great teams that went to states. But you got Minders, right?
Yeah.
Who really got it handed to him against Palmac. Not the start that Coach Prain, I think, was looking for with Minders, but you got Coach Prain's son, Jake, kind of taking on the leadership role here as a senior of this team. You got Luffman, you got Hillmeyer, Griffin Hillmeyer, younger brother of Ethan. And I think that, they got a little bit of size. They should be pretty balanced throughout their lineup. I was really surprised at the margin of victory for Palmac. And, in looking back, I watched that game back, and they got to play defense. Like, it's don't want to be too harsh on them, but the defensive effort was lacking in that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing, I have seen that this age group now for Minders kind of firsthand for a number of years prior to this, and it's kind of always been a little bit of their MO is really good offense, but the defense usually does lack a little bit. I think, though, as the season goes on, they might have to adjust a little bit of a learning curve, right? You mentioned they're very balanced. That could be a good and bad thing at the end of the day, because I think, size-wise, they'll fare well, I think, against more teams than not, but they come across a couple taller guys. They might struggle admittedly a little bit.
Palmac, not a lot of size,
Right.
and they killed them again. They got to commit to defense. I know that athletically they can do it. And as usual, we're a little more harsh on the hometown team here in Seneca Falls, the Miners, because we maybe see them a little closer. At least I do know a lot of them personally, and I just know that they can probably put out a little better defensive effort than I saw in that game.
Yeah, and they got a tougher week next week, just looking at their schedule. They get Marcus Whitman at home, and then they have to go to Newark to wrap up the week. So, and then even into the following week, just after New Year's, they get Geneva at home. So 3 of their next 5 games could kind of tell what they are.
All right. Maybe we should switch it over to girls here, so this isn't a 4-hour podcast. Here's a look at the recent girls results. You just soak that in there. And again, going, kind of by league. In the Finger Lakes West, you're looking at Bloomfield as maybe the cream of the crop. Dundee Bradford brings a pretty good team. The South Seneca girls trying to get back to when the days when they dominated the Finger Lakes West. But again, Dundee Bradford almost doubled them up in their first meeting. South Seneca girls let up 84 points to Dundee Bradford. And just looking again, Bloomfield defeats Honeyway 70-11. Marcus Whitman girls beat Naples 43-8. HAC girls beat Romulus 60-18.
See, it's so lopsided.
Yeah, so you got these teams at the top, whether it's HAC, Dundee, Bradford, and Bloomfield. Honestly, to me, it looks like they're going to be the 3 teams in Whitman, maybe contending in the West for the girls. But and we didn't mention the HAC boys, who look pretty good this year too. Keep an eye on them going forward. But then you go to the Wayne County Girls League and looking pretty good. I mean, the Gananda girls, Ava, Jenny, Kaylee, Marvin, pretty solid core. Madison Dosh.
Pretty sure. I think the former on that one. Dorsch. See, now you got me.
Yeah, there's no R in it. Well, keep scoring in double digits, Madison, and we'll learn your last name. That's for sure. The Lions girls, Jayla Bell, one of the best players in the Wayne Finger Lakes. She had 27 points against Gananda, but unfortunately it was a 23-point loss. Gananda also really handed it to North Rose Wolcott, 65-10. East Rochester girls, always strong. They've started out 3-0. They beat Red Creek 62-13. And so on the Wayne County girls side of things, should be pretty competitive up top. And then, of course, going to the Finger Lakes East, you're looking at, I don't know, I'll turn it over to one of you guys. What do you guys like in the Finger Lakes East? The Newark girls are a lot better. They lost a tough one to Pittsford Sutherland this week, 59-47, but Karina Natalia looks like a good player. Takayla Vaughn looks like a good player, Naomi Jones, and that's a program that's been getting a little better and better. The Geneva girls,
they're independent.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to play in the East, honestly, after the past couple seasons, but they stepped out and played Honeoye and lost that game 30-26. So I don't know if they're going to find many wins on the independent slate either. Wayne girls look pretty good. I mean, we saw that last-second shot from Alexa Chimente, banking one in on 3 to get a win over Greece Arcadia.
We need to see more for Pelmac, though. Obviously, they've only played one game. I think they're going to be good, but let's just see a little more from them. And Waterloo, they've had 2 close games. What was it? They beat Bloomfield 42-39. That was a really good game. And then who did they – Notre Dame Batavia. They beat them only by 5. But again, they're very young, completely different roster compared to the past few years.
It's going to be Waterloo, Pelmac again in the Finger Lakes East for the girls. The Minders girls got thumped by Pelmac, which I was pretty surprised at because I think the Minders girls, while the roster's small, is pretty solid, top to bottom. There's 2 Verke girls on. Maddie Verke's now a senior, younger sister. Peyton Verke's sophomore. She's up on varsity now. Laura McDermott.
Yep. Just going to say her name.
Palladino, Sophie Palladino, Chelsea Korzeniewski, point guard, Allie Nigro coming off the bench. I just think there's too much talent on that team, but can they, that was a bad start, that Pelmac game. And the good news, we mentioned Paul and Ian Goodness, well, they got a sister, Taryn Goodness.
Right.
And she was a big reason Pelmac was able to handle Minders so easily. So in the East, you got, in my opinion, Pelmac probably in the driver's seat. Waterloo and Minders, we'll see how that goes. And Mid-Lakes, see if they can get back. Penang girls might be okay. They're on the East for the girls, West for the boys, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the East is really intriguing because it definitely feels, I don't think wide open's the exact right term, but it definitely feels more competitive than it's probably been collectively overall the past couple of years, right? You mentioned Pelmac. I still expect Waterloo to go out there and compete up towards the top at the end of the day. Kind of like one of those, not until proven otherwise, but, Addison Breed, Macy Muller, Gwen Panic, they've all played at varsity before now. It's sure the roster is different, but, you got a core 3 there that have played together at that level before that push comes to shove. I think that makes a difference, more games than not. Go back to Paul Mack. Mariana Hodgins still there as well, down low in the post.
Yeah, I forgot to mention her. So you got Goodness on the outside, Hodgins in the middle. That's a pretty good start. So plan to expect to see some battles with Waterloo again this year, but maybe Pelmac comes in as a favorite for those games.
Yeah, and Mid-Lakes, they always at least compete, right? So I expect them to be there. Minders, you expect as well at this point to compete, and I do expect Newark to make some noise this year. You mentioned that it's a program that's just kind of continuously gotten better over the course of the past couple of years. If the door may be perceived to be a little bit more open than usual, is this where they stick the foot in and come through?
Yeah, no, they've been getting better. I think, like I say, Karina Natalia is really maybe the potential catalyst for that to happen. and it's just funny because you go back to, I think it was 2012, I watched the Wayne and Geneva girls play, and I think that one was actually in the Blue Cross Arena for the sectional title. And you look how much things have changed. Wayne's really struggled too, but Geneva's hit rock bottom. But the Wayne girls might be competitive this year. Of course, they're in a bigger classification. So when you look at schools like Minders girls, for example, they might, even if they struggle in the league, historically B2 is a winnable bracket. And that's for another show. We'll look at all the sectional brackets.
I was about to say too, the way, and I don't know how much you guys have seen or anybody who listens or watches has really seen, but the classifications this year are not uber different, but they're different, right? I mean, Wayne and A is now joined by Geneva, Newark, Palmac. I think Minders is technically in B1 now. The way it's
the boys or girls?
Both.
Oh, really?
For the way it's restructured this year, I think that's the case because Section 5 brought back AAA this year for basketball. So, it's not, like I said, completely different, but you're going to see different teams either back in different classifications for the first time in a couple of years, or maybe even, I don't think anybody's technically down. So
we'll take a look at all that, probably the classifications and sectional chances for each team, usually starting right after the first of the new year, right around maybe that Christmas, New Year's holiday. We start looking at that. Right now, we're just getting acquainted with the new rosters. There's some familiar faces, some new faces. It's the way it works in high school. You get some turnover, and the good programs just kind of reload. New faces, same results, right? So with that being said, it's time, I think, to issue our first power rankings of the year, week 1 power rankings. It's fun to see how accurate we are now if you go to the end of the year, and we're never spot on because we don't have as much information as we vote on these. But the other thing that's fun about this, I haven't seen these yet. I, of course, submitted my votes as we all did, but this will be the first look at the compiled power rankings to start the year. So what do we want to start with, the boys or the girls?
Both are
both
on the
of them.
sheet, yeah.
So on the boys' side, you got Lions number 1, and I will tell you they were not my vote at number 1. I had Wayne at number 1.
It was a very split ballot across, really, to be fair, both. But this is the first time, I think, in the way that we've done the power rankings now for the past couple of years, where we have not had any unanimous number 1s at all, which is really intriguing.
Yeah, I bet that'll change in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Usually that has a funny way of working itself out, but it's great. And it is interesting now as Lions is an independent. They're going to be, like last year, we knew that once they got that top spot, they weren't going to relinquish it in the regular season because they just had nobody to compete against in league. So we got Lions 1, Newark 2, Wayne 3. Surprised to see Newark. I think Cam Blankenberg's the player of the year. I think Bill Thompson's program's kind of firing on all cylinders. But again, that Kellen Foster really showed out early this season, so they come in at 2. I would love, why can't Lions ever play Newark? This year, even as independents, they're not on the schedule. They're 7 minutes apart, 5 minutes apart, the two communities. I can't stand it. They should play every year. If you watch this podcast, you've heard me say that so much you're probably getting sick of hearing it. East Rochester boys coming in at 4th, tied with Palmac. Again, I thought maybe that Palmac win over Minders may have gotten them some more votes early on. And then you got the Gananda boys, good to see. The Bloomfield boys, HAC, we mentioned them, just touched on them a bit, but they are off to a pretty good start here.
Yeah, 3-0.
And then you got Minders, Marcus Whitman, and Waterloo rounding out our top 10. So we will see probably a lot of fluidity throughout the first few weeks, and we'll see how this thing shakes out after the new year when we really get into the heart of league play. And then on the girls' side, Gananda, number 1, which is Karen Mewison still coaching there? I imagine she is, yeah, and that's probably a good reason why. She's got a great program. It's always tough to gauge the Wayne County girls against the Finger Lakes East. Generally, you'll find Finger Lakes East at the top of the power rankings, but we'll see if that holds. Dundee Bradford also getting some early votes. And then you got Waterloo and Palmac. Bloomfield girls out of the West, East Rochester girls out of Wayne County, Lions, Caleb Bell, Minders, Newark, Mid-Lakes, Penn Yan. So, geez, I got to tell you guys, that looks different than my votes.
Yeah, Yeah, it was interesting to kind of see how really, I guess, all our different thought processes kind of went into it. It was really interesting. I think really towards the top, we all had, I think, a very similar path. It was really the bottom fives I found really interesting, where it's like, what do you gauge more? And it's tough. Kyle mentioned it, right? There's a lot of teams that still only played like one game. How do you properly gauge sometimes in that situation, right?
Yeah, or some have played.
What do you do?
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, you're good.
Or some have played games, but then there's no league games. They're playing out-of-league opponents like Greece Arcadia or whoever that might not
Maria.
win. Yeah. So it's tough.
Speaking of not to get off topic, Unna Maria might have one of my favorite names in Section 5 this year, a kid by the name of Hippo.
Hippo Vargas.
Yeah, I'm all on board the name train on that one. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I will say this: it appears as though we all kind of had at least a higher grade of sort, I think, to teams who brought back some sort of continuity from roster turnover to this year. That being said, it's going to be really interesting, I think. I don't know exactly how much change we'll see going in to next week. I know this week's slate of games, I wouldn't call it light, but I've seen bigger schedules week in and week out every now and then. And, I don't know if we'll get any true movement this week that maybe we anticipate. I'm really looking forward to, though, in a couple weeks when we get to, like, that tournament time, the holiday break in there and everything, because I think that's when you see a little bit more shakeup occur initially. You get to see, really, I think, teams at that point. You at least have 3 or 4 games under your belt and kind of see really where you potentially stand moving forward.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at some of these games coming up for this week.
All right. There we go.
So we start out, today's the 11th, right? So these games would be tonight: Dundee, Bradford at Naples. I predict a big win for Dundee Bradford there. This is the boys, by the way. And then Wayne at Livonia could be an interesting matchup. Wayne going on the road. And then you head forward to Tuesday. East Rochester, Gananda should be a good one in Wayne County. South Seneca, Romulus boys really battling against HAC, trying to see what that looks like. Boy, man, they might have been better merging when Mikey Kaufman was still there for Romulus.
We at least got 1 year of that anyway.
Brockport at Newark, interesting game for the Reds. They always challenge themselves in their out-of-conference. And usually tends to benefit them. Again, they made it all the way to the state Final Four last year. Be a tough act to follow for sure. Red Jacket Bloomfield in the West on Tuesday night. Lions Geneva. So you're going to see more games like that now that Lions is independent. Northeast Charter at Palmyra. Mid-Lakes at Penn Yan. There's a battle of teams that flip-flop. Penn Yan went to the west. Mid-Lakes went from the west to the east. I don't like it. You're in the league, play in your league. It's crazy. It's just like, oh, we're a little down this year. We're going to go to the west. Okay, well, I don't mind seeing those teams get beat up. If I don't root for them to win the west. I root for a true west team to win the west. But that's neither here nor there. Soda at Minders on Wednesday night. Batavia at Marcus Whitman. Wow, man.
That game really intrigues me. We saw Batavia in sectional time last year because they had to play at Bloomfield before a game that we covered. So that ought to be really interesting.
Buddy Brasky's still coaching at Batavia, I believe. Yep. Brasky versus O'Connor early in the season at Marcus Whitman. They got their refurbished gym. Always nice to see Coach O'Connor playing that tough Finger Lakes East schedule. Also going gets a bigger school in Batavia in their out-of-conference. Wayne versus Northview. Who the heck is Northview?
Yeah, I don't know that one, Kyle. You have any idea?
No, but I believe when I just did it earlier, this team is 0-4, 0-5.
Okay, then.
Northview. Okay. Marion at Sodus. HAC at Penn Yan. See how, again, we got to talk about this HAC team a little bit, led by Tyler Knapp, James Dorsey. Could be a pretty good team. Penn Yan maybe not the ultimate test, but anytime you're stepping out facing a former Finger Lakes East team, I guess, it'll be a good test for HAC.
Yeah, that's one of the games as well that I had kind of circled at least for later on in the week.
Wayne at TBT. Who's that?
Tournament, right?
Yeah.
They're playing in tournament. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so we'll explain that Northview game.
Yeah.
Gananda at North Rose Wolcott, Williamson Red Creek, Naples Red Jacket, Bloomfield at South Seneca Romulus, Man, South Central Romulus going to have a tough week, probably facing two of the better teams in the West this week, both on the road. No, Bloomfield's coming to Ovid, so Penfield Victor, a good game to keep an eye on, even though it's not officially Wayne Finger Lakes. Pelmac at Mid Lakes, see if they can control the Kyle Kumke scoring machine in Clifton Springs. Waterloo Newark. Now there's a game where no love is lost, and that's one to circle on your calendar. And then you got Wayne in that tournament again, and Canandaigua Brockport. So for the boys, it is an interesting week, and no love lost between Waterloo and Newark boys.
Yeah, that's been not maybe quote unquote a traditional rivalry as we call it, but it's been a really interesting one to see develop over the course of the past few years, and I'm sure this chapter, as we will call it, going to be no different. And
of course, all these results every night, thanks to Kyle, is keeping us informed. I know it's one thing I always check before I go to bed was the results on the Hardwood from that night, where, if you want to wait for the newspaper, you're going to get it the next day, and they aren't even going to have half the game. So Kyle does a great job keeping us all informed, and any highlights that are worth showing, like Alex Chimente's shot for Wayne, we had that up that night. The bank was open after hours. We'll just say that. Let's go to the girls' side of things this week. On Dundee Bradford, heavy favorites hosting Naples, Geneva North Rose, Wolcott. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, that's we'll see what happens there. And Red Creek at Wayland Cohocton, Greece Arcadia coming to Minders, and looks like they're merged with Olympia, Greece Arcadia Olympia at Minders.
Greece has some weird combos this year for merging.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to merge when you're all Greece something, so you just take two of the Greases, Arcadia, Olympia. Lima Christian at Honeoye, Canandaigua at Brighton, HAC at South Seneca. Bloomfield at Red Jacket, Pelmac at Hornell. There's another one.
That's a big non-leaguer right there. That's got I can't remember what class Hornell's in this year, but that's usually one that we usually see in the B1 anyway, traditionally.
Yeah, that Hornell team ended Minder season last year in the semis in a close game.
They're off to a 2-0 start, Hornell is.
So that's probably the game of the week on the girls' side. Jordan Elbridge at Clyde Savannah, Fairport at Victor, Romulus at Whitman. And then move ahead to Wednesday night, School of the Arts at Minders. So Minders going to have 2 games under their belt through the first 3 games of this week. And then Lions Clyde, huge rivalry. That has actually been better on the girls' side than the boys' side the past couple of years. That rivalry game going back to, I think it was 3 years ago, they might have met in the Class C finals in Canandaigua. So that's always one to keep an eye on. Red Creek hosting Williamson Marion combined team. East Rochester at Gananda, probably the game of the year early for the girls in Wayne County. They'll meet again, of course, later in the year at East Rochester. Bath Haverling at Newark. East High at Wayne. And then move ahead to Thursday. Naples Red Jacket, Honeoye at Romulus, Victor at Webster Schroeder, South Seneca at Bloomfield. Could be a good one there. Red Creek at Lions on Friday night. Gananda at Williamson Marion, North Rose Wolcott at East Rochester. Wilson and Early College are combined. Wow. At Geneva. That Early College was a force for several years. The Cobras. Now they're combined with Wilson. They're not even the Cobras anymore, I bet. Minders Wayne at Wayne. Tough test for Minders going to Wayne. Chance for Wayne to kind of make a mark in the Finger Lakes East girls side. Mid Lakes at Pelmac, another game that's been really great the past 4, 5, 6 years. Newark at Waterloo. Again, a test for Waterloo, who's obviously not quite at the caliber they were the past couple of years going to states. Newark, an up-and-coming team in the East. So that'll be a game to keep an eye on. And then Saturday, Naples at Wayland Cohocton. Penfield plays Canandaigua and Canandaigua East High at Penn. So there you go. Wow. We're underway.
Well, slates. Can't beat it. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, Not exactly maybe as full week as we hope, but there are games there to be had. There's definitely games there to be had. A lot of early season rivalries, at least up in Wayne County, getting met up this week for the first time. I think it's really interesting. Obviously, the boys' side of East Rochester and Gananda meet too the night before. Both games, kind of like how they're doing it. It makes me wonder if the back end of it, there'll be like a true doubleheader of sorts. But
I hope so, man, because that one of the most underrated rivalries in the Wayne Finger Lakes is East High and Gananda. They really turn out for those games, either place, at East High or at our East Rochester or Gananda. So they're renewing that rivalry this week. So, again, with each week that goes by, we get to learn a little bit more, and then hopefully by the end of this month, heading into the true 2024 part of the season, we got a pretty good grasp on what some of these games are going to look like. We're going to be at a lot of these games, calling them on FL1 radio, doing a little different this year, at least trying, moving away from the Mixler broadcast and using YouTube for the audio style broadcast. Hopefully you might be able to pair that if you're watching the school stream a little easier. So you can listen while you watch or just straight up listen. We'll have the live scoreboard up on the screen, but won't be showing live action. We may be able to show some of the post-game stuff, the interviews on the Little John and Barbie Smiles with Style post-game show. So we'll test that for a little bit. We may go back to Mixler. We'll see how it goes, right?
it's the beauty of it. Yeah, we're testing out, like you said, Jim, a couple different formats of sorts this year. Really looking forward to that. Guess if you don't mind, do I do the announcement right now of sort where we're at least
where are we going to be this week live?
Yeah, so nothing, I guess, official yet, but the target is definitely Mid-Lakes Palmac girls at the end of the week on Friday. We do some great work with the kids up there, and I'm really looking forward to getting with Mr. Kevin Schlegel again. And the kids up there, if you aren't familiar with that program that they got, they really do a banger of a job, to put it bluntly. It's about as professional as you can get for someone like that, in my opinion, and it's really great stuff. Love working with the kids up there, and I know they look forward to having us up there, so we really appreciate their help and allowing us to come up and kind of do these broadcasts with them, and it's a really great tool for us and the kids alike.
Before we get out of here, I'd like to hear your early season predictions for Wayne Finger Lakes Player of the Year on the boys and girls side.
Ooh.
I'm putting you on the spot because we didn't talk about this, but there's some candidates out there. You can mention a few of the candidates if you can't nail it down to one. I can kick it off. I like Cam Blankenberg on the boys side, and again, we're talking all Wayne Finger Lakes, so that includes Colin Foster, that includes Jameer Johnson, that includes other guys like Tyler Knapp from HAC and Kyle Kumke from Mid-Lakes is making an early, some noise early to maybe be considered for Play of the Year. Now on the girls' side, I got Taryn Goodness. She is like, we talk about these siblings. You saw Paul Goodness and then Ian Goodness, and I tell you, Taryn Goodness might be the best of the bunch.
Yeah,
best of the good. I would if they're playing 1-1 out there in the Goodness driveway during Thanksgiving break, I wouldn't be surprised if Taryn, won a few of those games.
Yeah, definitely possible.
Yeah, for me, for the boys' side, I'm going to stick with the guy who's off to a great start. Like I said, 52 points over the first two games, and that's Kellen Foster. Like his game, he's been shooting the ball very well. I mean, hit 4 threes in the opener. But yeah, there's definitely some competition there, like you mentioned, the other guys. And for the girls, this is tough, man. I really like probably Jayla Bell to win it.
Yeah, she's probably, if you go just by points, I bet you she puts up the most points.
Yeah, she's had 33 against NRW, and what would you say earlier, 27 or 28 against, what was it? I can't remember what team you said, but yeah, she's been off to an incredible start.
33 against North Rose Wolcott.
Yep. So, yeah, I think I'll probably stick with her, but your choice is just as good.
So I guess this is where I get to be different. Kellen Foster's a good choice. Blankenberg's a good choice. I'll go a little bit off the board. I'll go Brody Royston down in Whitman. I think he might step up and carry on the legacy a little bit.
He had 27 against Lions.
So, hey.
There's an example of a kid who watched as Aiden Royston, and there might have even been another Royston.
On the girls' side.
Yes. Well, Liz Royston, the girls' coach.
Oh, right, but yeah.
But where you're a younger kid and you see your older brother with that Whitman team that won their first sectional title for Coach O'Connor since 1976. What are we, about 4 years removed from that, maybe 5?
Yeah, probably.
But as a youngster, you watch that and you're exposed to that, and it kind of motivates you to say, hey, I want to do that. So that's a good dark horse pick.
Yeah, I love doing that. Girls, I'm torn. I'm torn between two. I'm torn between Eva Jenny up at Gananda and Kendall Parker down at Dundee Bradford.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
Kendall Parker. Remember, they knocked out Lions last year.
Yeah.
And she had 31.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what I'm going to do there. I guess I'll go for the moment and leave everybody mad. I'll go co-player of the year on the girls' side between Eva Jenny and Kendall Parker for the time being.
Ava Jenny from Gananda, and a partner from Dundee Bradford. And, all good choices. Of course, what we think doesn't matter. It's a lot. It will matter what we think when we give these awards, maybe at the end of the season when we got a whole season. Right now, we're just speculating a lot. And it's interesting, to talk about Colin Foster. He, last year in Newark's state Final Four run, he had flashes where he was great, but he wasn't consistent.
He got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, maybe there was a lot of shots to go around last year, but there were times when he looked unstoppable and times when he just would disappear. So far this year, looks very consistent, scoring high in both games. They're obviously going to have to lean on him, so we'll see if he can put that team on his shoulders. And either way, it's looking like another great year of high school basketball. And every year about this time we think, oh man, this isn't quite as good as the last year or the year before. The basketball's not as good. It always seems to, as we get towards sectionals, to come into place, and you get these really good teams who are primed for sectional runs. And maybe on next week's podcast we can talk about some of the teams that we think are in line to contend for sectional titles. I think that's one thing about the power rankings. They don't really mean anything, but if you find your team in our power rankings, then I think that's something that we consider you to be a sectional contender.
Yeah, that's the thing too, right? I mean, I remember last year, the team that really stuck out to me, for example, maybe like on the boys' side was South Seneca for me. Just kind of crept up the whole year, and you never know who. Sometimes it just takes a while too to fire off on all cylinders. Like Newark boys last year, for example, didn't get out of the gate good, and lo and behold, they're the ones who make a Final Four state run.
I think didn't they against Palmac score something like?
Yeah, they only scored I think like 22 points or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said that there's no way this team can win a sectional title if they can only score 20. I think they scored some ridiculous amount in like the second half, like 4 points.
It was a low-scoring affair.
And boy, that caught a little bit of the ire of the Newark Reds players and fans, and lo and behold, on to the state Final Four.
I guess you
I'm not
deserve
saying,
credit
because,
firing them up.
right, yeah, well, sometimes people get mad at me. I'm like, geez, don't get mad at me. It's just my opinion. You go ahead and show it on the court, right?
Yeah.
And I guess they did.
All right, who else can I fire up this year? Let's see. We'll see how it goes.
Too early yet to start that.
But anyways, guys, thanks. Again, all week long, FingerLakes1.com. Going to have the results nightly, thanks to Kyle. And so follow the action. Be back here with us on Monday. And once again, thanks to our season sponsors here of high school basketball, Generations Bank, Little John and Barbie Orthodontics, Rosselli Northern, Cicino's Pizzeria and Restaurant, Dr. Jeffrey Halstead, and DeSanto Propane. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to cover these student athletes every winter here on the Upstate Hoops Podcast and on FingerLakes1.com. So thanks for joining us on Upstate Hoops. Connect with us on Facebook, X, at FingerLakes1. That's formerly Twitter, for those of you that don't know, and TikTok at FL1 Sports. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Our audio-only podcast is available most everywhere you enjoy your audio content. You can also find our show, live stream games, and local news, weather, and sports 24/7 on the free FingerLakes1.com Android or iPhone app. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Monday.